She fell at 3 in the morning. Not a dramatic fall, not downstairs. She got up to use the bathroom, misjudged the distance to the door frame, and caught herself on the wall except her hand hit the corner of the dresser first. The wrist fractured on impact. A clean break, the emergency room physician said. Nothing that wouldn't heal. But while she was sitting in the discharge waiting room at 6 a.m., a hospital pharmacist came to review her medications before she went home. It was routine, a standard medication reconciliation check before discharge. The pharmacist looked at her medication list. And then she said something that Sylvia had never heard in 4 years of filling that prescription. Are you aware that this medication has a black box warning? Sylvia was 70 years old. She had been taking zopiclone, a Z drug, the class of sleep aids that includes Ambien, Lunesta, and their generic equivalents every night for 4 years. Prescribed by her GP after her insomnia worsened following her husband's illness. Renewed automatically at each annual appointment. Never discussed beyond the initial prescription. Black box warning. She didn't know what that meant. The pharmacist explained. A black box warning is the FDA's most serious level of drug labeling, the highest alert the agency can issue, without removing a drug from the market entirely. It appears on the prescribing information in a black bordered box. It signals that the drug has been associated with serious or life-threatening risks that prescribers and patients must understand before use. And Sylvia was sitting in an emergency room, waiting room at 6 in the morning with a fractured wrist. I'm Dr. Ben. And in this video, I want to talk about something that should happen before the prescription is written, and that almost never does, because the black box warnings on sleep medications are not obscure findings. They are not edge case concerns buried in clinical literature. They are regulatory determinations printed on the prescribing information of every bottle that most patients over 60 have never been told about. Let me be specific about what these warnings say, because the language matters. In September 2020, the FDA issued a black box warning for all benzodiazepine medications, the class that includes diazepam, lorazepam, clonazepam, temazepam, and their many generic equivalents. The warning addresses serious risks of abuse, addiction, physical dependence, and withdrawal reactions. The FDA's own language in issuing the warning stated that the current prescribing information for benzodiazepines does not provide adequate warnings about these serious risks and harms associated with these medicines, so they may be prescribed and used inappropriately. Read that again. The FDA's own assessment was that the prescribing information did not adequately warn patients. Separately, Z drug zolpidem, zopiclone, zaleplon, azopiclone also carry a black box warning from the FDA, specifically addressing the risk of complex sleep behaviors including sleepwalking, sleep driving, and other behaviors that can cause serious injury and death. In 2019, the FDA required Z drugs to add this warning after receiving reports of serious injuries and deaths from sleepwalking and sleep driving in people who had taken these medications. Sylvia had not driven a car in 4 years, not because of the medication, but because her husband had been too unwell. She didn't know about the driving risk. What she experienced was the fall risk. Because the other documented risk of both benzodiazepines and Z drugs in older adults, one that appears in the American Geriatric Society Beers criteria, in geriatrics guidelines worldwide, in multiple published meta-analyses, is falls. And fractures from those falls. A nationwide nested case control study published in BMC Geriatrics examined fall-related injuries requiring hospitalization in older people taking benzodiazepines and Z drugs. At all dose levels of benzodiazepines and at high dose levels of Z drugs, the risk of hospitalization requiring fall injuries was significantly elevated. Polypharmacy combining 2 or more of these drugs raised the risk further, with an adjusted odds ratio of 1.61. Sylvia was on zopiclone at a standard dose. A single drug, not polypharmacy. And she had a fractured wrist. Now I want to name the mechanism. Because this is not just about warning labels. It's about what these drugs actually do to the body of someone who is 70 years old, at 3 o'clock in the morning, waking from medicated sleep. Benzodiazepines and Z drugs both work by enhancing the effect of GABA, the brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. GABA slows neuronal activity. That's what produces the sedation that allows sleep. But GABA receptors are not only in the brain regions that regulate sleep. They are in the cerebellum, which governs balance. They are in the brainstem, which regulates respiratory drive. They are in the motor cortex and spinal cord, which coordinate movement. When a Z drug or benzodiazepine enhances GABA throughout the nervous system and it cannot selectively enhance only the sleep-relevant receptors, the result is broader sedation. Slower reaction times, impaired balance, reduced coordination. Sylvia's fall happened at the exact moment these effects are at their most dangerous, several hours into a nighttime dose, when the drug's half-life is fully active, when the sedation has been running long enough to suppress the balance and reflex systems that would have caught her. She wasn't sleepy when she fell. She felt awake, but her cerebellum, her motor cortex, her grip, all of them were still under pharmacological load. After 60, these effects are amplified. The aging nervous system processes GABA-enhancing drugs more slowly. Clearance is reduced. The drug stays active longer than it does in a younger body, and the compensatory systems that a younger person might rely on, faster reflexes, stronger grip, better proprioception, are themselves reduced with age. The fall is not an accident. It is a pharmacological outcome. This is what the hospital pharmacist explained to Sylvia at 6 a.m. She was careful, thorough, and kind. She also said something that stayed with Sylvia. This warning has been on the drug since 2019. Your pharmacy has it on file. I'm sorry nobody has reviewed it with you before now. Sylvia asked her GP about it at her next appointment. Her GP was not dismissive. She acknowledged the warning, acknowledged that the conversation should have happened earlier, and opened a discussion that had 4 years of lost time to cover. The discussion covered 3 things. First, the fall risk was real, and it had led to a real injury. Continuing the medication without addressing that risk was not sustainable. Second, zolpidem, like other Z drugs, creates physical dependence even at prescribed doses. Stopping abruptly would produce withdrawal, rebound, insomnia, anxiety, in some cases seizures. The taper had to be gradual, supervised, and monitored. It was not a decision to be made at home. Third, the reason Sylvia needed the medication chronic insomnia following caregiving stress and grief was a real and treatable condition. But the evidence-based first-line treatment for it, cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, had never been offered. A referral was made. Sylvia tapered over 8 weeks. She started CBTI with a trained therapist. The taper was uncomfortable. The first 2 weeks were difficult. But by week 6, she was sleeping not perfectly, not every night, but without medication. And for the first time in 4 years, she got up in the night without fear. She said to her GP, "I wish this had been the first conversation instead of the last one." Here is what you can do with this information. The first thing, look up the prescribing information for your specific sleep medication and read the section marked with the black box. Sylvia didn't know this document existed. The pharmacist told her she was entitled to it and that her pharmacy had it on file. If you take a benzodiazepine or a Z drug diazepam, lorazepam, temazepam, clonazepam, zolpidem, zopiclone, zalplon, ezopiclone, that document exists, it is public, and it is yours to read. The second thing, do not stop or reduce abruptly. Sylvia's taper took 8 supervised weeks. Physical dependence on benzodiazepines and Z drugs can develop even at prescribed doses with regular use. Stopping without medical supervision can produce serious withdrawal effects in some cases, seizures. Any reduction must be done gradually and under medical guidance. The third thing, bring this question to your next appointment, and bring it with Sylvia's specificity in mind. I've been on this sleep medication for some time, and I understand it carries a black box warning related to falls, dependence, and withdrawal. I'd like to discuss whether the risks of continuing are still appropriate given my age and health profile, whether a gradual taper under supervision would be appropriate, and whether I've been referred to cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia as the evidence-based first-line treatment. That question does 3 things. It demonstrates that you know about the warning, which changes the clinical conversation. It asks for a taper plan rather than an abrupt stop, which is the clinically appropriate approach. And it specifically names CBTI, which the American College of Physicians designates as the first-line treatment for chronic insomnia above medication, and which is frequently not offered to older adults because it requires a referral and a wait time that medication does not. Sylvia's wrist healed completely. She walks in the mornings now, something she'd stopped doing when her husband became unwell, and something she started again as part of her CBTI therapist's sleep hygiene recommendations. She uses the time to call her daughters. She told me, "The pharmacist at the hospital knew more about my medication in 10 minutes than my doctor had discussed with me in 4 years." That's not a criticism of my doctor. It's a criticism of a system that makes 10 minutes the standard. In the next video, I want to cover something we've touched on throughout this series but never addressed directly. The blood tests that almost no physician orders routinely, not fasting glucose, not standard cholesterol, not even the ones most people think of as comprehensive that predicts cognitive trajectory in aging adults better than almost any other single biomarker. One number. The research on it changes how you think about what normal means. Subscribe so you don't miss it. And if someone you know has been taking a sleep aid for years and has never been told about the black box warning on the label, share this. Not to alarm them, to start the conversation that should have started earlier. I'm Dr. Ben. I'll see you in the next one. The information in this video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice. Never stop or reduce a benzodiazepine or Z drug without medical supervision. Abrupt discontinuation can cause serious withdrawal effects, including seizures. Always consult your doctor before making any changes to your medications.